At SheCan, we lead with women's stories. We're building up the largest online library of women role models, and I'm really excited to talk to Taban Shoresh today. Taban, welcome to SheCan. You're the founder of the Lotus Flower, and you support women and girls affected by conflict and displacement. You give them tools they need to rebuild their lives, and you run safe community centers inside refugee camps for displaced women and girls. And since 2016, you've impacted more than 60,000 women and girls, and your programs cover education and livelihoods, mental health and well-being support, plus human rights and peace building. And so we would love to hear more about yourself and your purpose, your job, your life that has led you to where you are today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on here. I'm delighted to be here. Well, I guess where do I start? My life purpose and the work that you've described. My life, my personal life and my professional life are just so interlinked because of my journey. So I'm a child genocide survivor. I was a child political prisoner at the age of 4. I escaped being buried alive with my family by Saddam Hussein's regime. My father was poisoned, and we ended up coming to the UK in 1988 as refugees because of his poisoning, and we were persecuted for being Kurdish by Saddam Hussein. So I guess my childhood has got a lot to do with what I do. I was born into conflict, experienced conflict from day one, and know what it's like to be a refugee. And when I went back to Iraq, Kurdistan in 2014, this was after ISIS had gone into the region and caused a humanitarian crisis, but also a genocide against the Yazidis. So I felt like history was repeating itself. I spent 15 months out there supporting a local organization to work on the front lines to support during the humanitarian crisis. So this meant doing lots of distributions, building camps, education programs, livelihood programs. So I became very close to working with the women and girls that had been impacted by ISIS. And when I came back to the UK, there was no way that I could go back to a normal 9 to 5. So all those personal and professional experiences kind of made me realize that my purpose was to give back and take the experiences that I had and turn all that pain into purpose, essentially. So I learned how to take all of my own personal pains, but also the things that I've experienced and turn them into purpose, which has now had impact of the lives of 84,000 women and girls and community members. So it's gone up from the 60 that you mentioned. So it's been phenomenal, an amazing journey just to kind of witness that impact in action.
Taban, so tell us exactly what the Lotus Flower does now, impacting 84,000 women and girls, which is amazing.
Thank you. So we support women and girls impacted by conflict and displacement, and we kind of believe that it takes a community to support women and girls. So it's not just women and girls that we support. We work with men and boys, we work with different groups and leaders in the region. And that's because we believe that you need all community members to help support women and girls in living safely, to having opportunity to be financially independent. So the way that we work is that we've got 4 pillars that are aligned to sustainable development goals. So education and livelihoods, peace building and human rights, health and safety. We've added climate change to that recently as well, because Iraq is the 5th most vulnerable to climate change in the world. So those are our pillars, and under those pillars, you have projects. So under education, for example, we'll have adult literacy. So this includes women that have never picked up a pen in their life. It's one of our oversubscribed courses. We do financial literacy, computer literacy, English language, and any other educational courses that they feel there's a gap. Under livelihoods, we do women's business incubator programs. So we help set up businesses. And these are really, really varied businesses. It can be anything from Baking Sisters, which is a bakery, to Jam Sisters, which is a jam factory. We kind of work by the needs of the community. We're very much community-led and needs-led organization. Peace building, we do a lot of work around peace building. So, for example, we have Peace Sisters and Peace Brothers, which is a community mediation training program. So we train community leaders to become mediators and help them develop peace building programs in the community. Um, we're building a peace institute soon. I think it will be the first women's led peace institute for women. So it's quite unique in the region. We do a lot of work around human rights, obviously, and all of it kind of, women's rights, girls' rights is all human rights, and every strand of what we do kind of falls into that. Um, there's health and safety, so we do a lot of protection programs. So we're UNHCR's child protection partner. We do lots of general protection for women and girls. Um, there's an array of programs that I could go through. Mental health is very, very key in the health work that we do. Climate change, we do food security programs. So we've built greenhouses that we've turned into businesses for women for food security. I mean, the list is very, very long if I went through all our programs, but the whole aim of everything that we do is how do we support women and girls to heal, learn, and grow. That's essentially the strand that we kind of fall into. We're starting to work in the UK as well. We're based in East Sussex, but hoping to kind of start pilot projects here, but also spread out across the UK. And the way that we would work is exactly the same. We're very community and needs-led organizations. So the needs in the UK would be very different to what's needed in Iraq. What we're seeing in the UK is that we need a lot more peace building projects, a lot more social cohesion, and more work around narratives and changing the narratives and how refugees are seen. So that's a rough overview of what we do, but there's quite a lot there.
Which is so impressive, Taban. And I know I have led projects on the ground in Africa for decades. One talks about all the things one does, but actually to put these into practice and to follow through and to then actually really contribute to supporting other people's lives is a massive, massive thing. So I would love to understand, how have you been able to finance all of this? How big is your team? How do you put these incredible programs to being a reality? And being community driven and needs driven is exactly how charities or non-for-profits have to organize themselves, because then you go less wrong, right? So you're led by the people on the ground, and you don't sit in an office somewhere deciding programs without knowing exactly what the people on the ground need. So I love everything
Yeah.
you've said. Explain to us a little more how you put this in practice and how do you finance that?
Yeah. I think as someone with lived experience and experience of seeing how other charities have kind of, maybe bigger charities have gone wrong, I've always known from day one that change is driven from within the community. You just need to provide the tools and opportunities and access to enable them to do that. And what we do in the programs that we deliver are a great example of that. I mean, I was quite strategic, for the first few years, I wanted to make sure there was a need for what we do.
Mm,
So all the projects that we kind of implemented, I had to make sure that there was a need there before structuring it in a way that would allow more funds to come in. So it's been a strategic journey of growth whereby the first few years was quite small. We started from nothing in my living room to no money. And then it was just one project, work with that project, see how that grows. Then we started volunteering programs in the camps and then realized there's a massive need. So we became a lot more structured and started developing sustainable development goal pillars
mm,
and applied projects under that. And a lot of our funding at the time is all projects. So we apply for only project funding and realize that we're really good at projects and we can get project funding on the ground. But it's not just about projects. So this is the thing that people don't understand is that for a business, for example, to run, you need departments, you need resource to run it, to make it successful. That the narrative of charities, kind of people should be doing stuff voluntarily and should be running on a shoestring, is really something that really, really needs to change because we're talking about human lives and human investment. If you want to see change in the world, in the planet, you need to start with the individual first. And to start with the individual, you need to put funding and investment there. And so for me, I go around saying if you want change, you need to provide long-term, sustainable, unrestricted funding. Anyone that chooses to be in a sector, we're choosing to be in it because we want to change lives. We will know where the money needs to go in that organization. I can give you examples where donors have donated towards one project, and then the next year they've decided, actually, our strategy is changing, so we're going to go towards another project. And we've gone back to them and said, but you can't, this was a mental health project. You can't just leave 35 critical cases. So for me, as a leader, we're tapping into our unrestricted funding because these are 35 critical mental health cases that we need to support. And just because the donor has to change the strategy, it would be so wrong for us to leave them. So it's times like that where you need access to be able to make these changes, make these decisions. And so funding is always a struggle. I think we've got to a point now because our due diligence is in place, our programs are strong, our M&E is strong, that we're able to absorb and take in the project funding on large scales. And so that's great, it's phenomenal. But what that does mean is that I have to raise unrestricted funding to keep the organization going. And what keeps the organization going is the core team.
Yeah.
The core team that go out, that do fundraising, that do due diligence, that make sure everything is in place. You can't function an organization without those core functions. And those core functions are needed to make an organization strong and sustainable. And so it's always a constant battle. But I think for me, luckily, I used to be a project manager or a digital project manager in an asset management firm. So my skills were quite transferable in that I knew that comms and marketing and the storytelling is very important. So we focused on that from day one. And then also I looked at the way that funds invest. They diversify, they make sure that, they diversify their pool. So I've known from day one that I can't rely on one funding source and I need to make sure that I have to diversify constantly. But it's always hard. I'm not going to lie, trying to raise unrestricted funding is the hardest battle. And the ones that, the supportive that understand it are the ones that understand, okay, I'm making a human investment and this is what's needed to support an organization to make a human investment and growth. And so for me, I actually welcome those donors because they're understanding of that and they help you develop a pipeline to be sustainable and to grow properly and to make real tangible impact.
And to run a non-for-profit like a business, which is how it should be.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Taban, so would
exactly.
you say the funding side is the biggest challenge you have, or what are the biggest challenges that you have in running the Lotus Flower or conducting your life?
I think the funding side is a challenge. I think it's 0.2% of funding in the world goes to women and girls organizations. So that in itself
Yeah.
is a challenge. The funding pool in the world for where areas get funded, women and girls do not get a large percentage of that.
Yeah.
I might be wrong percentage, it might be 2%. It's still very, very, very low. And so that's already a challenge. That's already a hurdle that we're facing. But if we go into like hurdles and challenges that we face in the communities that we work, as leaders, as a women's rights organization working in Iraq, or it could be in other parts of the world, we face challenges whereby people don't want us to do this work. There are governments, there are people that don't want us to do this work. And so having that challenge is very difficult. For example, in Iraq, there was a few years ago a gender backlash, which really, really impacted women's rights organizations and has made it harder for us to do our work. And so for us, there are political, societal, and cultural challenges that we face daily and security to do what we need to be doing. So we have to kind of take that into consideration. There's lots of challenges. I think one thing that we've got right as an organization is the way that we build trust and work within the community so well in diverse communities. We kind of are, we don't align ourselves or any political party where it's any, we support everyone. We're very inclusive. And so for us, that's really important. And it keeps us neutral and it allows people to kind of work with us from different groups. And having that trust from the community is key because you're allowed to co-create with them. They let you co-create together. And I believe that's really, really important. I don't go into I'm Kurdish, I'm from the region, but because I've grown up here, I would never pretend to know exactly what the community needs. I listen to my team, I listen to the community that we work in. I might have certain ways of thinking or values. I never impose it. So I never go into a region thinking my thinking is the right way to do something. I should implement this. It's always led by the other way in terms of, no, you know what your community needs. We'll work with that.
Yeah. Taban,
Listening is key.
listening is key. I was just thinking, what would your top 3 tips be for women who really want to make a difference and think, I need to set this up, a non-for-profit where I support other people? What top tips would you have for them?
I would say, first and foremost, don't be scared. Don't let that imposter syndrome get in. We need more women and girls to kind of realize that they can play those roles. We need more women and girls in leadership roles to recognize that they can change the world. In fact, we need a lot more women and girls in leadership roles around the world to try and save us from everything that's happening in the world. I do believe if we had more women in leadership roles, we wouldn't be facing as many conflicts around the world. We need more peace builders. We need more collaborators. So first thing I'd say is don't be scared and recognize your worth in the world and knowing that you are needed. Your skills are needed. Everyone's got different skills, everyone's got different passions, but your area that you want to work in will have an impact in the world. And don't think any change is too small. So sometimes we sit there and go, oh well, that's too small. I can't make a difference. What difference would that make? I started this in my living room with no money and no connections, and I never thought I'd be where I am now. So anything is possible and believe in that and listen and allow other people in. I think that's one thing that kind of has worked with us is I've really allowed people in. I've listened to people. I've accepted somebody else knows more than me. Like I've just left my ego at the door and said, no, other people come first. They've got better skills. They know what they're doing. You kind of include people into the journey, and that's really important. I think we've included people in the journey really well.
Taban, and what are you most proud of to date?
What am I most proud of? Wow, so many things. Obviously, I'm proud of my organization and my team. That's a given. But I think I'm also proud of that day that I just picked up the pen and said, I'm going to do this. And I did it.
Yeah.
So it was from the decision to the action to doing. I'm just proud that I did it.
Taban, and what are your plans? What are the goals and aims you have for the next years?
I would, oh, are you hearing? Sorry.
No.
The plans for the next year, we're definitely looking to grow in the UK and to support projects in the UK. So that's one thing. We'll continue to work in Iraq. And my aim is to build a strong foundation, a long-term sustainable foundation to really help us build towards the future.
Taban, and if you had a wand, a magical wand, what is the one thing you would change?
The magical wand, I would, wow, that's a big question. The magical wand, I'd stop all conflicts in the world. That's number one.
Yeah, yeah. Taban, I am so excited to have your story on here. I'm so thankful for you to lead with your story and for leading by example, for setting something up that is so beautiful, round, makes so much sense, has such a huge impact, for showing that when you have an idea and you follow it through, you can really achieve big things. I'm very excited about your impact you will have on the UK, where we do have to change the story of refugees. We have to change this cultural narrative that we have. I'm excited for you to contribute to that and make a difference there. So thank you so much for coming on She Can.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Thank you.